And welcome everybody. We are here for day 2 of week 1 for the World Cup of Pokemon VGC, hosted by none other than Victory Road. I myself am Costa, and today I am joined by lovely Gabby Snyder. Gabby, are you ready for the exciting matches we're going to be seeing today?
Oh, definitely. I think that it's absolutely incredible that we're having such a high caliber tournament this early on in the Series 10 format, and I really can't wait to see what people are going to be running today.
Oh, exactly, because essentially in these kind of tournaments, especially these kind of like high-level grassroots ones as well, you kind of see the formation, or should I say solidification, of the meta itself. So you kind of get to see a bit more in the insights of top-tier level players from all around the world as well. So it's going to be very, very hot action that we are going to be able to observe today. And of course, we did have the stream yesterday. Today, we're going to have a whole different host of countries going head-to-head against each other. So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut to see the actual schedule of today, as you can see them right in front of your screens right now. Fevzi Özkan versus Will Tansley for our first game. Michal Sushek versus Ismat Miron for our second. Kyle Livinghouse versus Alex Donaldson for our third, and we're going to be finishing off with Paul Ruiz versus Efe Bustamente as the final match. All very, very exciting matches.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see some of these names because we have this like perfect mix of, you know, some players who are a little bit newer to the scene, some players who are like OGs, like yours truly, and then some players even coming off of a really strong Players Cup 4 finish. So again, this is such an amazing tournament. You get to see it all. It's a great opportunity not only to study the metagame, but to practice if you were one of the people drafted to play. So good luck to all of our players. I am so excited to see what people are going to be using.
Really are. So what we are going to be doing is, like we said right now, we're going to be hopping into game 1 as we're going to actually check to see the current progress between these two countries. We've got the UK versus Germany coming up initially in the stream. At the minute, UK seems to be winning 1-0. Ladies and gents, this is the currently registered results that we have been able to update. There may be updates already in the Discord server, but we have to go based off of the website. But oh my lord, Gabby, is that an Eternatus that actually won right now? That and a Mandibuzz, oh my lord.
Yeah, no, Eternatus apparently is super good in Series 10, and admittedly, I haven't had a chance to sit down and, you know, really spend some time with it to figure it out, but I have heard some fantastic things from a few friends of mine who have been running Eternatus, so don't count it out, you know, even though it wasn't necessarily viable in Series 8 when we still had access to the Dynamax factor. Now that that's off the table, I think we're going to see a lot more Eternatus, a lot more Zacian, and maybe even a couple Zamazenta. Not a lot, but a couple.
That's a hot take. I love hearing hot take. I mean, to be honest, Zamazenta does have access to some very good techs, you know, such as like wide guard, quick guard, so it could really throw off your opponent if they're not so well versed in the capabilities of that Pokemon.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, but I have a feeling we're not going to see one today. I think that given how it, you know, like you said, it does have access to more of those defensive techs, it's going to be more of a later metagame adjustment once people sort of determine, okay, this is what we're expecting to see. For today's games, especially with the UK versus Germany, who are both two very accomplished regions in terms of, you know, VGC accomplishments in general. I think we're going to be seeing a trend more towards consistent play, more towards consistent Pokemon. And what better Pokemon to use than Palkia, who was the surprising winner of the Victory Road World Cup Open that happened a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. I mean, Palkia, people don't take Palkia that seriously, but then again, if you look at the current meta, it has a lot of answers to it.
Yeah, and honestly, I find it kind of surprising that Palkia has done so well, because just traditionally in a restricted Pokemon format, it has not been, the number one pick for a lot of people, barring maybe like 2010 or whatever, when you only had four or five restricted Pokemon to pick from. Yeah. But Fevzi's, it looks like he's going to be running a adaptation of Emmanuel Briganti's team, who did end up winning the Victory Road World Cup Open. I need to practice saying that a few times, forgive me. But, a very accomplished player, just coming off of getting third place at the Players' Cup 4, won the Champions Cup back in 2020, and is honestly one of the more active content creators I think we have in this tournament. So I'm really excited to see how he's going to pilot this team, knowing that this is probably something he's been spending a lot of time practicing with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when it comes to Fevzi and his plays, he is world-class caliber, and that is why we are guaranteed to see some very exciting match coming out from just his side. But talking about his side, we're going to go on to his opponent's side. Representing the UK, we have Will Tansley and Zacian and Gyarados. Oh, wow. Yeah, I did not see that.
Yeah, that was honestly my reaction. I was like, okay, so Gyarados is back. That is super exciting. Gyarados is certainly one of the more niche Intimidate users that's available in Sword and Shield, and given that it has access to Levitate, given that you can run some pretty interesting shenanigans with some of its more supportive moves, I'm excited to see what kind of role that it's going to be taking on this team, which otherwise looks like a fairly standard Zacian support team for what I've come to expect from Series 10. Incineroar, Regieleki are almost requirements, I think, in this format if you're running a Pokemon like Zacian or Kyogre. Amoonguss is great redirection. You can use Regenerator, swap it in and out as many times as you want to heal it. And Landorus Incarnate, which, it does give you access to Sheer Force over Intimidate to boost some of those special attack moves. So also sort of justifying that pick with the presence of the Gyarados. So I don't think Intimidate's going to come into play too much in this matchup, given that Fevzi's running Palkia, which is known to be a attacker on the special side of things, but still a really interesting tech that I hope we at least get to see, maybe a little bit of what that Gyarados is going to offer.
Exactly, and it is piloted by Will Tansley. I know Will, I've met him in person. He is a fantastic battler. He hasn't been as present in the latest metagame, but seeing him come back, for me personally, makes me very happy, because I know this trainer is capable of great things. You see his achievements as well, so this is looking to be a very, very hyped first match of our stream today. And without any further ado, ladies and gents, we're going to go straight into the action. We are going to be seeing it from Fevzi's point of view, and these other Pokemon, like we did talk about just now, the Palkia, are we feeling, Gabby, that it is going to be a big player in this game because it has access to basically a lot of elemental moves and typings, so it can try to counter some of the threats on Will's side?
Yeah, I think that Fevzi is going to be forced to rely on Palkia, not just because it has great elemental coverage, but also because I think the Zacian is going to be such a big threat coming from Will, and the best way to sort of answer the threat of a restricted Pokemon is to bring the restricted Pokemon of your own. The nice thing about facing off against the Zacian team, I think, for Fevzi is that Zacian is one of those Pokemon where it can't really surprise you too much. It usually has Behemoth Blade. It usually has a fighting type move. I've seen a lot more running Substitute recently alongside Protect, but still something that you have the ability to sort of anticipate and play around. Whereas Palkia, I honestly don't really know what to expect from this Palkia, so I think that Fevzi definitely has that element of surprise going into this turn one.
Yeah, it definitely is the case, as we are going to be seeing the leads coming out right now. Will decides to lead with Incineroar and Landorus Incarnate, whilst Fevzi says, I'll match your Incineroar with my own and add a little Amoonguss by its side. Maybe try to get any cheeky spores off if it can avoid a fake out.
if it can avoid a fake out, and then if it can avoid the subsequent flare blitz. We did get a little sneak peek of what item this Amoonguss is holding, so I don't think that flare blitz is going to be as big of a concern as Will would want it to be. But a very strong lead from Fevzi, because having the Amoonguss on the field alongside the Incineroar gives him two ways he can pivot here. He could switch out the Amoonguss and rely on a fake out potentially to stop the opposing Pokemon from attacking, or he can switch out the Incineroar, get that Intimidate back later, and use Amoonguss to sort of disrupt whatever Will has planned.
Yeah, as we are to be seeing the switch out of the Incineroar into the Zapdos, and the fake out does target down that slot, but reveal we do have Rocky Helmet on that Zapdos that did come in, and a substitute comes out from the Landorus, which allows it to very well played and interchanging sequence between both trainers here.
Yeah, just a quick call out. Not only did Substitute avoid the Spore, the Incineroar is also holding safety goggles, so this poor Amoonguss isn't going to be able to accomplish too much here. It's going to be up to the Zapdos to find an opening for Amoonguss to connect Spore with something, or for Fevzi to go ahead and switch it out. He does still have the Incineroar in the back of his party, which is always, you know, a beneficial switch in if there's something worth intimidating on the field. And right now, I think the Incineroar, given that it's already intimidated, may not be the best target for this, so maybe whatever comes in to replace it when Will switches things up.
Ooh, Earth Power comes out, it's able to deal and essentially and guarantee a 2-hit KO onto that Amoonguss, as the Heat Wave's going to be coming out from the Zapdos. Does a very small damage onto the Incineroar, but more importantly gets rid of that Landorus's substitute, as the Incineroar will be going for the parting shot into the Zapdos' slot, will be bringing down its attack and special attack to -1 stages, whilst most importantly being able to get that pivot action going for Will and bring in a new fresh Pokemon.
Seeing the Earth Power do so much damage from this Landorus and not be followed up by a Life Orb activation is something that Fevzi is going to have to be very careful about.
Yeah, as we are going to actually be seeing the Landorus now be put to sleep, as of course the substitute did break, which did allow it to be spored essentially.
It did, and knowing that Heat Wave does enough damage to break the substitute on Landorus is great information for both these trainers, as now Fevzi's in a great position to go on the offensive with Zapdos, you know, also bringing in his own Incineroar to be able to double down on that Amoonguss. It's very clear that Fevzi wants to make sure that, unlike him, Will won't be able to connect any spores to this game.
As the Zapdos is gonna want to avoid any spores, it opts to go for that protect, as we do see Landorus take its first turn of sleep. Spore comes out, it does try to target down that Zapdos, so well played and repositioned from Fevzi there.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing here is sort of an indication of this early, slower version of the Series 10 metagame. You know, we saw Series 9 end up in this position where almost every single trainer had multiple Intimidate users on their team. People were playing slowly, they were switching, they were playing very defensively. And I think the fact that Spore is being relied on so heavily by both of these trainers is a very natural continuation of that. Fortunately for Fevzi, he was able to connect the Spore first, and he was also able to sort of avoid the Amoonguss until he had the opportunity to attack into it for big damage. So he does have the upper hand for now, but if Will gets an early wake up, that could certainly change.
As the Incineroar is going to switch out on Fevzi's side for the Amoonguss. The Amoonguss on Will's side goes for a protect. Comes out from the Landorus, but thanks to all of the Intimidates from the Incineroar before, it's not going to be dealing as much damage as it would have liked, as Zapdos immediately retaliates, goes for the Heat Wave, will be doing very small damage. Picks up a burn, absolutely mitigating any physical damage prowess that this Landorus could ever hope to get out.
Yeah, one other call out that I just realized, forgive me y'all, I have not had my coffee yet. Landorus holding Life Orb would still get that extra damage boost for those special attacks. The reason why we didn't see it was due to the sheer force ability. So again, just something to keep in mind. You are absolutely right that the Stone Edge did not do damage due to all of those Intimidates, and now the burn on top of that I think is going to force this Landorus to rely more on these special side of its attacking capabilities, and that means that Will is almost going to be forced to target the Amoonguss slot. If the Incineroar switches in again, that would be a great target for an Earth Power. Even if it doesn't switch and, you know, had the Landorus been able to connect an attack, that would still put Amoonguss down into the red. So this Landorus is a very big threat right now.
So it did try to go and get some damage dealt onto the Amoonguss. The Zapdos does actually miss the Heat Wave onto the Amoonguss. It would have really liked that. It does land on the Landorus, but does minimal damage. And in turn, the Amoonguss on Will's side is going to be able to put Zapdos now to sleep.
So now we're gonna slow things down just a little bit here. We have another Pokemon asleep on the field. Landorus, barring a critical hit from that Stone Edge, is going to be unable to really remove the Zapdos from the field. It's a great opportunity for Will to go on the offensive against the Amoonguss on Fevzi's side. And I think he's going to have to, because this game, given how it's been played so far, is really going to come down to which person is able to knock out the opposing Amoonguss first. Because if you think about it, you know, this game has been very slow so far, and it's all because it's been centered around these two Pokemon. So Will, in a fine opportunity to go for it over the next couple of turns, we'll see if he gets it.
No switch outs from Fevzi's side. Is just going to have to take that Earth Power damage. Oh, so much damage as well. The Zapdos does still sleep, of course. Clear Smog actually coming out from Will's Amoonguss onto Fevzi's there might be an indication of its only damaging attack that it could inflict onto the Amoonguss, whilst Fevzi's is able to get a Pollen Puff off onto its partner Pokemon, that Zapdos, allowing it to absolutely recover all of its HP.
And that is why Pollen Puff has really become more popular on Amoonguss over the past few weeks. It's essentially given Zapdos, you know, 150 HP, or 150% of its HP available to it in this game. And Amoonguss is such a perfect user for it because, again, if the opportunity is right, you can just switch it out and get more health back yourself.
As the Landorus is not going to be able to land an Earth Power into that Amoonguss's Protect there. Zapdos is still asleep. Oh, and the Amoonguss on Will's side trying to catch that Zapdos off guard just in case it does wake up, trying to cover for that potential eventuality, but not able to do so as it's still asleep.
But a good play from Will, and I think a good sort of recognition of the fact from these trainers that it really is which Amoonguss goes down first is going to give the opponent a huge advantage. And it looks like Fevzi's Amoonguss is down.
It's down and out for game one due to that Earth Power from the Landorus. Heat Wave finally comes out from a early, or should I say late bird Zapdos there. Does pick up a KO, but minimal damage dealt onto that Amoonguss as it is now in a very free position to put the Zapdos to sleep and at least guarantee the Zapdos is asleep for the following turn.
I think that's an indication of a very, very defensive-oriented Zapdos on Fevzi's side of the field. I would have expected a Heat Wave to at least have done, I don't know, maybe like 30-35% damage to that Amoonguss. Given that there's no sort of special attack dropping, stats on the field, I don't believe the Zapdos had been parting shotted. There's no.
It had actually been from the Incineroar from the pivot before, earlier on in the turns. Yeah.
That makes sense. So never mind then, that explains. But still, the fact that Amoonguss is essentially free to sit on the field for yet another turn here, I'm not sure there's too much Palkia can do to threaten it, really will keep the momentum in Will's favor.
Unless, of course, that Palkia, for whatever reason, has Fire Blast and it's able to connect with it. But like you said, that's the
I didn't even think of that.
So, I mean, that's why it's such a threat, because it has so many options with its move pool. As we're actually going to be seeing Fevzi's Zapdos switching out now for the Incineroar. It's going to be able to get an Intimidate drop onto the opponents. Incineroar being able to bring it down to -1, but I would assume that the Incineroar on Will's side will be wanting to try to go for pivot, as the Palkia is going to actually opt to go for the... No, it actually opts to go for the Flare Blitz. One Incineroar onto the other, not being able to deal much damage at all. Spore from Amoonguss does actually try to connect to the Palkia now. Palkia, apologies, but is only met with a Protect.
And getting the Incineroar opposite the Amoonguss is exactly what Fevzi's been waiting for. I think he'll have one opportunity here to go for a Flare Blitz into that spot. His Incineroar is not intimidated, so it's going to do as much damage as it possibly could in this situation if it's able to connect the attack. So maybe you take a turn to fake out if you're a little bit worried about, you know, not getting it in one hit, but still, Fevzi needs this knockout on this Amoonguss in 1 or 2 turns. Otherwise, it's just going to put his Pokemon to sleep and just give Will this really nice slow out in terms of the game.
Yeah, definitely. As it's as we can tell, of course, it's been a very heavily position-based gameplay from both trainers right now. As the Amoonguss on Will's side is going to actually opt to go for the Protect. It does not want to get flinched right now, as we did see the Fake Out trying to do so. But Palkia is going to return. It connects with the Hydro Pump into the Incineroar slot on Will's side, and will pick up a clean KO.
All right, 2 down, 2 to go for Fevzi, and the nice thing about this situation is that Zacian is going to be unable to switch in and out. So even if this Amoonguss is able to protect Zacian with the help of a Rage Powder or a Spore or 2 or 5, Fevzi has the opportunity to switch the Incineroar out, in and out a couple of times. Yes, he will be taking damage on the Zapdos in this case. That's going to switch in to take its spot potentially, but getting those Intimidates in so that Zacian can't do damage, you know, it does get that attack boost from Intrepid Sword, and that can be something that's really scary for someone to look down. Just getting those Intimidates down will give Fevzi the best possible chance to win this game 1, but it's still going to be close. You know, there's still that Amoonguss that he has to worry about, and every turn he's not attacking the Amoonguss is going to be a turn that something can potentially be put to sleep.
Exactly, as we have to be seeing the Zapdos switching in now for the Incineroar, wanting to get that Intimidate switch in for later on, as no, the Zacian actually goes for a close combat. Of course, that Zapdos will be resisting it, and Amoonguss will be trying to hope to go and put at least something to sleep. We see the connect of the static ability from Zapdos onto Zacian. Very big turn of events there. Not what you would expect. It doesn't even have that high of a chance, but then again, nearly a third is enough.
And this is, I think, why Zapdos is going to be such a good bulky support Pokemon in this format. It's wanted access to that hidden ability of Static for so long. It has such great natural bulk. It has good coverage, especially when you're seeing a lot more of these Amoonguss around on the field. And just a really great way to punish an otherwise very passive turn. I think it was a little bit risky for Will to go for that close combat into the Incineroar. You know, I don't think they necessarily stay on the field much, and maybe he was hoping to catch Fevzi by surprise by making that read, but unfortunately for Zacian, it got paralyzed, and it also has the lowered defense and special defense. It's going to make knocking it out so much easier for Fevzi.
Exactly, as the Zacian is now going to be put back to neutral when it comes to its attack stages. And Palkia is going to try to go, and it does connect with a Hydro Pump. No Rage Powder coming up from the Amoonguss on Will's side. And the Hydro Pump deals so much damage, does not even go for the substitute. I feel like this is one turn too late for Will's side right there, as Amoonguss will be able to successfully put that Palkia to sleep.
I don't think it matters anymore, though. I think the Palkia was very happy landing that single Hydro Pump to deny Zacian the substitute. As a result, you know, the Zacian is going to be slower than the Incineroar thanks to that paralysis. It is certainly within knockout range, and even if Amoonguss goes for a Rage Powder here to try and, you know, take that Flare Blitz away from the Incineroar, it's going to be taking a Flare Blitz from an Incineroar, and that's going to be doing so much damage. Zapdos can then easily take the field once Incineroar has been knocked out by a second close combat and clean up. So it was a very valiant effort by Will. However, I think just a unfortunate recognition of the fact that Fevzi had a great job of managing all the momentum, and even though the game started out so slow, and even though Will did have the last Amoonguss standing, just really keeping his eye on those win cons and playing that very well.
I do feel like at some point, though, if, let's say, for example, the penultimate turn, if Will actually opted to go for a substitute where the Palkia opted to go for the Protect and the Incineroar switched out to the Zapdos, you could have really profited quite well off of that, as the Amoonguss is just there for redirection. And then the Zacian's main job is to be behind a substitute, just go ahead, try to deal as much damage as possible, and not get affected by any future Intimidates. But this is the game we play, VGC. It's all about mind games, especially amongst two very, very top tier level players.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I wanted to call out in terms of adjustments in this game too. You know, we didn't see a single Rage Powder, I think, from either trainer that entire game. And that was something that I think is worth, you know, calling out. I don't really know if these Amoonguss on these teams want to function as a Rage Powder user. I think on Fevzi's case, given that we've seen the Pollen Puff, I think that it's a good indication that it's going to be more of a supportive role. But over on Will's side of the field, there were several opportunities for him to go for a Rage Powder substitute play, which, yes, is very passive, but at the same time, getting Zacian behind a substitute just makes it that much harder to take down. It means that you have to hit it twice. You have to get the Hydro Pump to connect and the Flare Blitz to connect in this in the past game situation. So going into game 2, I think you definitely have to be cautious of the Amoonguss on the opposing side of the field for both these trainers. But I think you also just have to remember, you know, it's not just there to spore Pokemon, and it can really make some of those more tougher plays to execute, like the substitute, a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. So I am very, very interested to see how Will is going to try to adapt to this gameplay right now, bringing in game 2, because I do think that it is very important to see what kind of leads are going to be coming out, because this is all about positioning. But Will is going to actually opt to go for the same lead as game 1, and we actually see the change from Fevzi's side, as he's going to be bringing the Palkia and the female Indeedee on the field. And we do actually note that the Palkia is of the pressure variant rather than telepathy, which it does actually have access to now.
I always keep forgetting that, honestly. Like, we've gone so long without these restricted Pokemon having access to their hidden abilities. It's very mind-blowing every time, you know, you see one, like the static on the Zapdos. But very interesting adjustment here from Fevzi. You know, usually Palkia plus Indeedee is an indication of some sort of Trick Room setup or some kind of Trick Room play. I'm very surprised to see that, given how prevalent Amoonguss was in the previous game. Usually when you're struggling with taking down an Amoonguss, your adjustment isn't to, you know, set up Trick Room in front of it, as it usually will give the Amoonguss a speed advantage of some sort. Could be an indication that Fevzi understands the speeds at play here and maybe isn't afraid of the Amoonguss, or could also be an indication that there was, you know, an additional adjustment made somewhere that can handle the Amoonguss better.
As we're going to be seeing the Incineroar on Will's side, switching out for the Amoonguss. Landorus goes for the Earth Power right now, deals over half of damage worth onto the Palkia, but then it's going to retaliate. Ooh, it doesn't choose correctly. It goes for the Amoonguss slot, which was previously the Incineroar. Whilst no follow me from Indeedee, we actually see Expanding Force covering for the switch. My lord, Fevzi playing out of his mind right now, picks up the KO and deals so much damage onto the Landorus as well.
That could have honestly been an intentional Hydro Pump if the Palkia, or if Fevzi was worried about the Amoonguss holding a Focus Sash. I don't think we've seen the item revealed on that Amoonguss yet, so really a smart play, not only covering for the switch, but covering for the fact that if the Amoonguss does switch in and if it does have a Focus Sash, this next turn you are pretty safe to go for the Follow Me Trick Room play. You're most likely going to lose your Indeedee in the process, but that will work out better, assuming that Fevzi has a slower Pokemon in the back to take its place, and I think Incineroar would love to be on the field right now.
And here comes the redirection from the Indeedee, whilst the Zacian is just going to be setting itself up with a substitute. And Landorus is now going to be going for the Earth Power. Not quite enough to pick up a clean KO there, but deals so much damage. But more importantly, like you said, Gabby, the Palkia has now just set up Trick Room.
But the substitute there was a great adjustment from Will, acknowledging the inevitability, if you will, of the Trick Room play. Fevzi does have the opportunity to try and break the substitute. Hydro Pump certainly would do it. It's possible this Ndidi can deal that much damage of its own, since I know Ndidi's special attack is a lot higher than it probably should be, all things considered. But still, Zacian is in a great place to sort of slow this game down and allow Will to last these Trick Room turns without necessarily that Amoonguss being present.
What a reveal. We see the Landorus go for the protect, and the Ndidi, believe it or not, goes for Shadow Ball onto Zacian, fails to actually knock out that substitute there, which is still attached to the Zacian. The Hydro Pump tried to pick off the Landorus, but wasn't able to do so, as the Zacian is going to go ahead and deal the final hit onto the Palkia, picking up a clean KO while still having its substitute up.
Shadow Ball, most likely an adaptation for the Calyrex Shadow in particular on Ndidi. I do know it shares the normal psychic typing, which means Calyrex Shadow shouldn't be able to hit it. So really a strong play there. I don't think Expanding Force, even with the boost from the electric terrain, would have done enough damage to break that substitute. So just going for the best option for damage there. It's unfortunate that the Hydro Pump missed, but I think that Fevzi is still in a strong position given that there's a few turns of Trick Room left, and given that the Ndidi can probably go back to relying on Expanding Force this turn, which should be able to pick up the knockout on that Landorus. We get to see the second adjustment here from Fevzi, which is the reveal of the Stack Attacker, which is actually holding the safety goggles, which is something that we know thanks to the fact that we're watching this from Fevzi's perspective. And this is, I think, exactly why you make this Trick Room adjustment, even though Amoonguss was super scary in game one. Not only is Stack Attacker able to underspeed Amoonguss in Trick Room, having access to that safety goggles really makes the matchup against a spore spamming Amoonguss a lot easier. In this case, Stack Attacker doesn't have to worry about that anymore. It can just go on the offensive here and try and deal some good damage to Landorus or to Zacian. But still, just good to know what Fevzi was thinking as he went into this game too.
As Will's going to be switching the Landorus out now for the Incineroar. We'll be getting that Intimidate drop off onto the Stack Attacker, which, of course, they are mainly known to be physical rather than on the special side. But Body Press completely ignoring that. He uses the defense stat of the Pokemon using that move. Expanding Force comes out, will not be affecting the Incineroar due to the Psychic onto Dark type interaction of immunity, and it is enough to pick up the substitute fade, should I say, from the Zacian. The Zacian goes for the close combat and absolutely knocks that pile of bricks out of this game.
What an interesting play there from Will. I really like how he's relying so aggressively on these close combats. I think normally as a Zacian user, you're pretty scared to go for them because the defensive drops turns your not great defense into something a lot worse pretty easily. But the fact that Zacian's been able to land 2 close combats for 2 knockouts has put Fevzi in a position where even if he were able to get an attack in somehow, I don't think that Will gives it to him on the Zacian. I think you just switch in that Landorus in the back, and then once Trick Room expires a turn from now, you can get Zacian back on the field and clean up for this game. So very well played from Will. Again, that substitute just absolutely key in allowing Zacian to take those knockouts.
Exactly, and that's why it is such a strong option to run on Zacian, as well as other Pokemon as well during this format, but it makes so much sense on Zacian, as it is now going to be switching out. It was the reset all of those drop defensive stat stages for the Landorus, as the Ndidi now, female Ndidi on Fevzi's side, will be trying to target down the Incineroar, get a tiny bit of chip damage with the Shadow Ball, followed up with the Throat Chop, actually, which will be stopping Will's Incineroar from using any sort of acoustic type moves, in other words, such as Snarl, Parting Shot, etc.
Oh, that's tricky. You know, getting the Parting Shot there would have been the perfect pivot for the Zacian to get back on the field. So a good play by Fevzi calling that, but unfortunately still going to struggle, I think, here against these 2 Pokemon. Even if your Incineroar goes for big damage on the opposing Incineroar with a Flare Blitz, I don't think you necessarily get that KO after the Intimidate.
Exactly, as we're just going to be seeing a protect from the Indeedee, protect from the Landorus, as the Incineroar on Fevzi's side will be trying to target down the Landorus, followed up by the Incineroar on Will's side trying to target down that Indeedee. So a bit of a stalemate turn nonetheless.
And that's okay for Will because now Trick Room is over. However, that stalemate turn really hurt Fevzi. It's going to be very easy for Will to connect an Earth Power against this Incineroar, to connect a Throat Chop against the Indeedee, and again clean up this game. And there still is the Zacian in the back on top of all of that. So I think Fevzi honestly over-adjusted for this game too. I like what he was thinking. I like that you sort of acknowledge that Amoonguss is your opponent's only Trick Room stopper, and then you just bring the Pokemon that can shut down Amoonguss easily. But unfortunately, Will was just able to play slow enough that it didn't even matter. Amoonguss was gone after the first couple turns.
As we're going to be seeing Indeedee trying to redirect that Earth Power so as to not hit its partner Pokemon there from the Landorus. It does go down, gets KO'd. Throat Chop actually comes up from Will's side of the field right now, goes into the Incineroar, but unfortunately for Will, he will be losing his Landorus due to that Flare Blitz from Fevzi's Incineroar.
But it's a safe switch in for the Zacian, who can close combat this Incineroar. There's no protect, so I think you just close combat and win at this point.
Yeah.
It's time for Fevzi to start thinking about Game 3, and I think that's honestly why we haven't seen him lock in a forfeit yet. It's always nice to have these couple extra turns just to sort of not only confirm what your opponent is thinking in terms of their win con, but also just think through your game plan. So a great adaptation from Will, though, to take Game 2 and to bring us into a Game 3.
Exactly that. So I think, like we did mention quite a few times already during this game, too, that Zacian having the substitute is so key. You get to absolutely be immune to any sort of intimidate spams. You're not immune to parting shots, though, so that's an interesting interaction there. Sound-based moves can still go through the substitute there, but just having that offensive pressure of the Zacian being so strong, held behind the substitute against a Trick Room setup, I think that has to be the option and the way to go for Will. And we did see he was able to prove just that.
Yeah, and going into Game 3, I think if I was in Will's shoes, I would just bring the same Pokemon once again, because they just worked out so well, and I think that they give sort of options for you to stop whatever Fevzi's thinking, regardless if he just goes the Trick Room mode again, or regardless if we see the return of the Amoonguss like we saw in Game 1. What's curious to me is how quickly Fevzi has locked in, hypothetically, like he hasn't clicked the done button yet, but how quickly he selected those 4 Pokemon going into this Game 3, especially seeing that he is choosing to forego the Amoonguss. I think what Fevzi's team is built around, especially when you have the Indeedee and the Amoonguss, is you have 2 different follow me users. Well, technically you have 2 different Pokemon who can redirect. Let me just phrase it that way. The fact that that one of those Pokemon is Indeedee with access to Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain almost feels like it's the anti-Amoonguss pick. And then rather than playing this game of like, okay, I'm gonna spore your Pokemon, you're gonna spore my Pokemon, and then our Amoonguss are just gonna, like, I don't know, sit on the field and dance to each other for the next few turns until something wakes up. You're able to take a much more aggressive role and go for the knockout with your supportive Pokemon. So I like how we're gonna be seeing the Indeedee lead from Fevzi here going into this Game 3. I think the big question is, though, what did Will lock into, and did he make any adjustments of his own?
Yeah, because I feel like the Pokemon right now that Fevzi's maybe opted to go for, like we did make the note of how essentially it seemed to be maybe a comfort pick, or maybe he just knows what Will might be trying to go for, because he's led the same, as Will has actually opted to go for the Landorus Incarnate and now has the Amoonguss on his side there. So maybe wanting to start slowing down Fevzi's game plan there, get a Spore, get some damage off, and then try to waste out the turns of Trick Room.
Yeah, but unfortunately for Will, I think Fevzi has the option here to just immediately go on the offensive. Maybe take a turn to like protect on the off chance that your opponent, that Amoonguss has protect on its own, but go for that double damage. You know, Spatial Rend is 100% accurate, though I don't think we'll be seeing it used here. maybe trying to catch an Incineroar on a switch, but still go on the offensive and take out the Amoonguss before any Pokemon go to sleep.
Ooh, this might be a very risky turn one of game 3. Earth Power connects into the Palkia. Palkia, oh, it opted to go for Hydro Pump into the Amoonguss slot, maybe to try to guarantee that double up KO with the Expanding Force combination there. He could have easily have targeted the Landorus' slot there, but maybe he felt that the Landorus was too threatened and would have just gone for that Protect.
I think so. The nice thing about this play is that it looks like Earth Power did just under half of Palkia's health, so maybe if Fevzi knows how bulky this Palkia is, you risk going for a second attack. Alternatively, you can just use Protect yourself, and Indeedee, given that it's holding a Focus Sash, will be able to take the one hit from the Landorus regardless of how much damage it does, and then get that Expanding Force in, and then next turn, or maybe even the turn after, depending on, you know, if the Amoonguss protects again or not, you're able to lock in that knockout on it without any Pokemon going to sleep. And I think that's honestly the best play for Fevzi moving forwards. Again, just given how much of a problem Amoonguss was in game 1.
As the Landorus is going to be opting to go for the Protect, followed immediately after by the Palkia. Interesting speed interactions there as well between them both. We're not sure if it is a potential speed tie or if it could be or not, but regardless, Expanding Force comes out, deals so much damage onto the Amoonguss, nearly picking up a KO. Oh, and the Amoonguss incorrectly targets the Palkia there, which actually did a very good Protect, to be honest.
That was a fantastic Protect, and even though it didn't get to utilize, you know, the fact that Protect stops damage, I think that Fevzi still made the best possible play there, because Palkia is still on the field, and again, this Indeedee is in a great spot to just go for the Expanding Force for the knockout.
As we're going to be seeing the switch out now of that Palkia into the Zapdos, actually maybe anticipating an Earth Power going into that slot perhaps, as the Amoonguss goes for Protect. It does not want to get KO'd from this Indeedee's Expanding Force. The switch out there, unfortunately, the Landorus was baited by that Zapdos's switch in there, and the Expanding Force Indeedee strikes again and has proven to be quite an offensive threat to Will's team.
And I think that again just confirms that this Indeedee is like the anti-Amoonguss role on Fevzi's team. It's done such a good job of providing enough distraction so that Palkia could get the damage down needed. Or, well, actually, it was really all Indeedee's damage, wasn't it? But it hasn't even been attacked yet on Will's side of the field. And I think that just goes to show how great of an adaptation this Indeedee was for Fevzi. Will certainly does have the option to go for a Behemoth Blade into that spot. I think that the Zacian should be around for 2 turns, even if it does take damage from both an Expanding Force and a Heat Wave. But it's still going to mean the Zapdos is absolutely unchecked, and it does mean that the Zacian will be within knockout range from a second round of attack. So Fevzi just keeping this momentum going and in a very safe spot to just click 2 attacks and not have to worry too much about how will adjust.
So the Amoonguss is going to be switching out now for the Incineroar. It will be proccing that Regenerator ability if it is, of course, carrying it, which will be regaining at least a third of its HP's worth. The Intimidate, as we do see right there, comes out from the Incineroar, but the Zacian is going to go for Substitute. Will that Substitute get knocked out right now is the question. Oh, Heat Wave miss, but onto the Incineroar, which doesn't matter as much. The crucial connect was onto that Zacian there, so it can force the Substitute to fade and accept a bit of chip damage right now coming from this Indeedee yet again, which is not slowing down the throttle at all and does a bit of chip damage while Psych Terrain is still on the field.
And it's a good thing for both these trainers to know that Heat Wave will be doing enough damage to break the Substitute. If Zacian decides to attack this turn, I think that you have to target down the Zapdos, because even though the Indeedee is annoying at this point, it's really only support for Fevzi. I think Fevzi honestly wants to keep that Indeedee safe so that when Amoonguss makes an appearance again, it's still going to be within knockout range from the Expanding Force. But so Will has the opportunity here to get some momentum going once again, but he has to call this turn perfectly, and he has to find a way to either deal some damage or keep Substitute up by the end of it.
Ooh, so the Indeedee is going to be withdrawn here. Maybe so could try to bring back the Psychic Terrain after, but more importantly, the Incineroar is going to be able to drop the attack of both the Zacian and the Incineroar on Will's side. Fake Out connects into the Zapdos. Ooh, close combat comes out. Good read there. Just wanted to try to cover the grounds of any potential switch outs, as it still would have picked up the KO onto that Indeedee, as we are going to be seeing the berry on Fevzi's side, the Citrus Berry recovering a bit of HP, and the little interaction of Will's Incineroar having damage inflicted due to the Rocky Helmet too from Zapdos.
I think the Zacian forewent a substitute that turn, because, you know, fake out substitute, especially assuming that Fevzi would have switched, it would have been a very safe play. But I think you have to go for the close combat, knowing that once Incineroar is out on the field, the Zacian would have been intimidated, and the only way you can get rid of that would be to eventually switch. So you just go for the damage, get the knockout on the Incineroar, and then you switch, and then when you come back in, that's when you substitute.
As the close combat comes out from the Zacian, will be picking up the KO onto the Incineroar. It is knocked out of this game 3 and set. Heat Wave comes out from Zapdos. Oh, just misses the KO onto the Zacian. Will be dealing a bit of chip damage onto the Incineroar. But right now, Fevzi still has a lot of pressure that he can exert by bringing in that fresh Pokemon.
Yeah, and even if Will were to switch in the Amoonguss, most likely for the Zacian, given all those defensive drops from the close combats. When Zacian does take the field once again, it's really only going to have one attack in it. So that means it's up to this Incineroar and this Amoonguss on Will's side of the field to find a way to bring these 3 Pokemon on Fevzi's side of the field down to one knockout, or essentially one attack to knock out to win. I think you have an opportunity to do that if you send in the Amoonguss now and you can find a Spore or 2, but it looks like Will's just going completely on the offensive.
Wow, going for the close combat, just shy from the KO onto that Palkia. Heat Wave. Ooh, the Zacian avoids Gabby. It absolutely avoided getting knocked out there, giving it that one more chance to try to bring this back, as Hydro Pump does connect onto the Incineroar, picks up the KO, and this is a bit of a funny situation here, as the Zacian is still going to be quite fast over on Will's side.
It is, and now that the Amoonguss is next to it, I think this Zacian has a couple more outs that it didn't have in the previous turn. Zacian, all Zacian has to do this turn is protect, and then Amoonguss can put one of these 2 Pokemon to sleep.
Yeah.
And assuming Heat Wave doesn't pick up the knockout on that Amoonguss, which I don't think it will, given how bulky it appears to be, Will might have found his way out for this game.
He could, and this is gonna be a very close one right now based on the interactions. Of course, Fevzi, when it comes to resources, does have more of them, but we're just gonna see a play out right now. Like you said, Gabby, Zacian goes for the protect. Heat Wave comes out. Will it connect onto the Amoonguss or not? It does. Will it pick up the KO? It does not, but is there a follow-up from this Palkia? There is indeed, and the special Rend will go ahead, guarantee the KO onto this Amoonguss, which more than definitely should mean that Fevzi does have this set 1.
Yeah, that was a really exciting game. Really, a really exciting game 3, because we got to see sort of the all the adaptations from these trainers. I think Will made a very good run at it towards the end to try and, you know, put that Amoonguss in the best spot it could to go for those spores like we saw it do in game 1. But the Indeedee just did not give it the opportunity to go for that. Indeedee was even still in the back of Fevzi's party at the end of that game 3, and I think it still had its focus sash. Like, I think it was still at 100 HP, which is absolutely crazy. Just really well played from Fevzi. I love to see the adaptation of both these trainers, but Indeedee is just the perfect Pokemon to counter Amoonguss, and unfortunately for Will, I don't think he really had the positioning he needed in order to threaten to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, it just proved to be in that case, didn't it? Because the Ndidi just went absolutely wild in both Game 1 and Game 3, and it's not a coincidence that Fevzi was able to win both of those matches. So very well played from top two caliber players. You know, it's always so fascinating and exciting to see players of this kind of experience and level to go head to head right there. 2-1 win, of course, for Fevzi. This will be meaning, based on the website, that the UK and Germany are 1-1 against each other right now. So stay tuned to the Discord servers, or the website, sorry, so you can see and follow the track to find out which team will be winning, of course. But what we are going to be doing is we're going to be cutting to a very short break up until we bring you the second match, which is going to be between the Czech Republic and Team Malaysia. So don't go anywhere, everybody. We'll be right back.